What is up, down, and sideways, you beautiful individuals? Is another FPF League Unlock. Eric and Mark here with you folks today for week 2. Again, all the weeks are completely different, so we're averaging here, a lot of averages for week 2 global power rankings. We got some squads making debuts, which means they actually deserve to be on this list. Looking at you over in the LEC, but we're still kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel to flesh out this top 20. I almost had Shopify Rebellion in that 20 spot. We ended up going with Ninjas in Pajamas to kick this one off, who are now 7-1 in that lower bracket in the LPL, which is why we're pumping the brakes.
I think that shows that we're having our healthy dosage of LTA, copium, and hopium if we're just able to keep Shopify Rebellion at bay just off of this list. And partly that is helped by the Ninjas in Pajamas getting a little bit of a runway room, getting some of these results that matter in the LPL, that you can throw them into this conversation of the top teams in the world and what you're seeing right now. Of course, as we always know, talking about Ninjas in Pajamas, you're going to be looking at your boy Doing B and seeing how he is interacting for the team, and he is going to be one of those key parts if you're going to see Ninjas in Pajamas be a mainstay on a list like this.
And eventually have to compete with that actual top of the table Ascend group over in the LPL. Also in that lower bracket group is, of course, D plus Kia, who remain about as shaky as possible. They lose to Fear X, and then they beat the abysmal DN Freaks, but they need like 40 minutes to do it, and it's a sloppy series overall. These guys they got to be careful. D Plus going to be out of the top 20 soon.
Yeah, they're certainly needing to impress more than we have seen so far, and I think you could put that label on in almost any type of circumstance, given what we have seen from this D plus Kia squad, but especially given the way that structure is laid out within the LCK this season and the type of competition that you have in this early point. Need to see more of that drive from this squad, and I think specifically it falls into the flavor that you'll find with a lot of the LCK and LPL teams that you find within this back half of the top 20, and you're looking at it and going, can you provide that firepower? Can you provide me that belief, that buying, bandwagon ticket that you will be one of these LCK, one of these LPL teams that matter? Can you be that 3rd or 4th seed from the region that still carries that type of strength and pedigree? Or are you going to be one of those lame ducks that we have occasionally seen from these prestigious regions on the international stage? Right now, for a squad like DK, I'm leaning more so towards the pretender at this point, given the way things have gone this summer, which I think for a lot of people, it's a little bit of a disappointment.
And the hilarious comparison between them and KT continues as 1-6 now, or 1-5 for KT on this split. They've only played Nongshim once, though, so they get 2 more matchups with them, and that's obviously where the lone win is. But again, we're comparing a shaky 2-0 against the DN Freaks to an 0-2 loss to Hanwha Life that KT had, where, there were close team fights, they had gold leads, but ultimately, you swept again.
Frankly, a different league, almost entirely at this point, when you're watching the type of competition difference that you're going through with these two in that LCK split. For KT, it is going to be always that challenge of judging them against what we think the ultimate level of competition and talent that you have within those top 3 teams in the LCK. So where do they fall in, and how do you view them in that situation of that running for one of those last spots of the LCK? I think with a lot of us, you're getting that protection of knowing what level of competition you're going up against. But as you laid out, you got a matchup against Nongshim where you don't really get that protection. And I think at the end of the day, as we move towards these these weeks, and we get, even more so pressure towards Worlds, you're going to have to start at least showing that you can take these games. You can push even further against these top teams, because guess what? Those top teams are going to be making up those last spots that will be remaining as you get deeper at the World Championship.
I guess there is an angle where KT can lose to the top 3 the entire split and then sneak in as the 4th seed heading to the World Championship still. There's still a path for that.
Still a possibility, which I think would just be the craziest of rewards for the lengths and desperation BDD himself has had to gone through this year, carrying so much of the weight of this team. And again, going through such, I think, turmoil, having to put yourself up against these Titan squads time after time again this early part of the LCK.
Yeah, our man's going to have back and mental health issues after this year playing with KT. JDG and Weibo ahead of the Rolster Coaster, obviously slowly going in different directions. Weibo kind of went through the gauntlet of losing to all the top 3 squads in BLG, TES, and IG, and JDG bounced back with a win against a lower tier squad, but they got swept by IG, but there were still moments of positivity. But both of these squads could probably peak pushing past top 10 or be outside of the top 20.
Yeah, that's what you're really trying to pay attention and keep track of with these two squads from the LPL is, can they heat up? Can they get to that level where you are considering them amongst that top team in the LPL? You're looking at the top eSports, you're talking about BLG, anyone's legend. Can you get to that tier of firepower? Now, I don't even think consistency is really going to be something you can get from either of these squads to that type of extreme, but can you hit that peak? And can that peak last long enough within this stretch to get that type of run that matters? That's where I think you're going to be looking at both of these teams. And for me, for JDG, it really starts by looking in that mid lane and saying, Scout has to start delivering the type of performances that we know his name to be, because otherwise it won't be enough for this team to get to that high enough level to be a top tier team within the region.
Maybe him seeing what Rookie's been doing lately is enough for Scout to say, you know what, this guy's even been around longer than me. Maybe how can he be playing at this level and I'm the guy who's getting called washed? So still think Scout can turn it around on a game basis, randomly flip a switch, but we're still waiting for that switch to be flipped for him. Then we get to a whole bunch of Western squads to round out this list, and obviously G2 and MCOY are bumped up from last week because they actually played some games. G2 had a very dominant 2-0 against Heretics, which, you'll take with a grain of salt as a lower tier squad. And then MCOY, I'm not going to say struggled, but a close series against Giant X and a close one against Carmine Corp to go 1-1. And again, if JoJo lands 2 more shockwaves in an entire game, we might be talking about them with a 2-0 start.
And what's that old kids game where it's a bunch of like car blocks and you had to set them, slot them in and slide them around to find the exact combination to get this one little car all the way through the traffic jam? That's what I think this global power rankings really is going to be in this type of position range. When you're looking at this trio of LEC squads and then talking about some of the others in the LPL, LCK behind it, what is your evaluation? Where are you going to shift these cars around to find your way through this top 10, this back half of it towards that top 10? That's really where it is, that evaluation on what you're seeing from these guys. And for me, the LEC is going to be moved up and shifted away through with the games that we have seen where I can throw them into this tier. But I think, again, like all these other ones, they have to prove that this type of movement, this trajectory is going to be one that matters when you're looking towards that top 10. And what have we seen from these LEC guys? We have seen at least that good positive first step that we wanted to see from a lot of these ones, and frankly needed to see from some of these squads given where we had seen the LEC last on the international stage.
And we're obviously going to get the Fnatic versus G2 head-to-head, which is the other marquee matchup in this whole first round. That is all we're getting. But, Fnatic after the 3-0 start, I talked about this a bit on Monday. They've had these fantastic starts, but, Mark, I've never seen them win so cleanly. They were winning a game with sub 10 kills. I'm used to Fnatic being the chaos squad, and is that really just a Poby effect that's making them that much cleaner? That seems crazy.
I think it's partly because of that. It's not as fully on to the 100% type of scale, I think. But when you're talking about what changes, what differences it has made with this team, I'm looking at an interview with Mickey, and he's talking about just at a base level, that the level that they were preparing and practicing and everything else, that type of work ethic, was so low that yes, it is an improvement. How much of an improvement? It's still, the jury is out. He's not fully convinced that this is an all of a sudden miraculous turnaround for the team, but it is an improvement. At the very least, is something that he's going forth. Poby is very vocal about what he likes, what he thinks in the game. And of course, that's one of those things that you always question or wonder with someone stepping into a situation like this. So that type of thing and everything else does lead me to feel positive about what we can see, what type of growth, where Fnatic might end up at the end of this split. And of course, that big time matchup, that test, and that classic one against G2 is going to be where the eyes are focused on to get that verification.
There's been a lot of decent starts in the LEC to varying degrees of cleanliness, we'll say, but I think no question, again, 2 weeks, very small sample size, but Carmine Corp, when they have played well, they have far and away had the highest level of synergy, had the best plays, and had the most confident wins so far. I know it was back and forth against Koi, but that's two of the top teams in the entire league. And after all this off-season drama, rumors around Vladdy, I don't know if he's been extra motivated, but these first couple of series, he's looked some of the best level he has had in the LEC.
And if this is what it takes, I mean, I don't know why we didn't pull this card out sooner. The little bit of light, a little fire, say, hey, prove me a little bit more in this situation. Because after that first split, I think that was one of the key things we identified with this KC team and how they could be a legitimate team on the international stage is the continued development and continued surprise of how much Vladdy could contribute and what type of weight you could put on him responsibility-wise as a player for this team and how he could carry it. I think that we are finally seeing that in this split, and whether that is simply, adding in Niski because of that, is it the Niski coaching effect as well, or is it simply an individual side of it returning for Vladdy? I don't care what the answer is, because the results on the Rift is a KC that looks more complete and is more so that KC that we saw wow us in that first split and head to an international event and hold their head against above water, against the top teams in the world.
And yeah, if Vladdy's playing at this level, then you legitimately have an argument for top two in most roles, at least 4 out of 5 in the entire league that Carmine Corp are out putting on the Rift. Knocked down one peg is anyone's legend coming into this one. They lose to IG, they beat FPX, but they need 3 games, and FPX is 1-7, but it's still the slow. They're simmering. The stew is simmering for anyone's legend. It might still be a few weeks before it's boiling over.
Yeah, but you've had this stew before. You know that this always hits the spot. Oh, I got to get my little slice of bread to soak up all the juices. It's going to be a heck of a meal. We know anyone's legend is going to be one of these teams. So yes, as much as we don't like to when we do these type of lists and kind of hit a bit of that refresh button type of thing, you are carrying over some of that legacy of our expectation, what you have already proven to us with this anyone's legend team when you are looking at the resume of work that we have gotten so far this summer. Doesn't quite line up. We are waiting to see a little bit more. Yes, I think more so kind of some excitement seeing a squad like IG get verified against what we have seen as a top team in anyone's legend, more so than the concern at taking this long against a squad like FBX, which, let's be frank, has to be one of these teams that you are clearing, no question, within the LP.
Yeah, and IG standing strong in that 6th spot, last team on this first half of the covered up list, but IG really has been the biggest surprise probably this LPL split. Anyone's legend having a slow start. I think most people were expecting the other squads that went internationally to also have a slow start, but IG going toe to toe have only lost to BLG and Top eSports so far, and even the BLG loss was a very competitive series. So seeing this level of consistency out of IG is the most surprising storyline so far.
Yeah, and I think the surprising thing out of it is that it has been almost so much of that, kind of one-man show. And I don't mean that in any disrespect to the other parts of this IG team that have, frankly, change in the jungle and what has been the results of that movement, but more so how good Rookie has been and how much it has pushed this team knowing that there are other aspects when they are online, when they are providing that next level difference, can be the thing that throws you into that elite category of the LPL. So if we see that turn online for this IG team, you're going to be seeing a lot of people going crazy about them.
Sandwiched in between those two LPL squads, we've got FlyQuest and the Flying Oysters. FlyQuest gets bumped that one little notch ahead of AL as the highest ranking Western team. I know they were pushed back by Riot Gaming, but again, this is kind of the hard stop line for FlyQuest until they run through Cloud9 in whatever fashion, because again, the competition just isn't there. But still, I think you ask most people, they'd be saying Fly is the top Western team right now.
Yeah, I think that's the happy conclusion that I come to when I'm seeing everything from the LTA. And really, the only thing that I can hold on to sometimes when I'm watching some of this action throughout the weekend of the LTA, knowing that FlyQuest is of that caliber, is deserving of this tier. When you're looking at a global power rankings, when you're in the top 10, you start to turn your eyes towards that world championship and start going, what matters? Where's the numbers? Where do we draw the line as far as these things? And for me, at the very least, how do you get from 10 to 8? Because 8 is where you're going through in those quarterfinals. That's where it really matters. That's where we're looking at how many spots of that can the West find themselves amongst the landscape of the LCK and LPL. Yes, unfortunately, as Eric is showing, it's mostly 1 is usually the type of spots as we've looked in the past. Yes. And as you know, that CFO is hanging out here in our top 10, in that top 8 type of category. So yes, one of those spots you had already been fighting for is going to be gone. Can you prove that you deserve one of those spots within that top 8 with an Oysters there, with the rest of the top dogs of the LCK and the LPL? For me, FlyQuest has shown that they are going to be in that tier, and I think getting that head-to-head or getting an impressive win with Cloud9 and pushing it, yes, they can go up a little bit, but right now, for me, I've seen enough from them and know enough about this team. That is where my eyes are focused and thinking about it with them. Can they prove that? Can they get that check mark from you in that type of regard?
And that's a Oysters team fresh off of dismantling Team Secret Wales 2-0, who were the other undefeated squad heading into that matchup. So feeling very good about the top spot from the LCP right now. We're still feeling pretty good about all 5 teams within the top 5. Yes, it is the same 5 returning from last week with only one little shift. And of course, that is the primary head-to-head of Gen.G versus T1. Mark it down, 1 week. We didn't have Gen.G in that top spot. And again, I know people were upset about that because you look at the full calendar year. Yes, Gen.G's been the best team, but we were looking specifically at Split 3, where T1 had this incredible start. But then you get Gen.G win 2 out of 3 games in dominant fashion, and they're snug back on their throne.
A very deserved return to the throne for Gen.G, I will add. And I will still stand and die on the hill and defend that T1 did deserve their spot in the spotlight at that very top of the global power rankings when they did have it at that point. You get that head-to-head, and especially the way that those last 2 games go throughout that series. No question, Gen.G reclaims that type of spot, but that is the type of level, that is the type of difference that is between these two when you are talking about the ultra elites, the contenders of contenders. When you're looking at the world championship right now, that is the bar that is set, and it is continually rising, right? Being pushed by one another. And that doesn't mean that these other 3 squads that I'm looking at within this tier can't put their hand on the monkey bar and get the lead spot type of situation. But for me, at the very least right now, it is still going to be those 2 at the front, and it is now Gen.G kind of pushing the head of T1 behind them as they grab that top spot.
Yeah, and that's obviously a spot that T1 has been also familiar with over the last couple of splits. But the other squads on this list vying for that spot, it's still BLG and Top Esports rolling their way through. I know BLG, crazy schedule, back-to-back, played World Elite over the weekend. It took them 3 games, and one of these games, a couple of them actually, they had such massive early game leads that they kind of took the foot off the gas, and it slowed down, dragged out. They threw a little bit, but that's to me just a team that's, playing a little sloppy because they've been so dominant.
And I think it's one of these situations where maybe it's being spoiled by the LCK, being spoiled by how amazing Gen.G and T1 are as those front runners for the region, that we look at these, three from the LPL, and you're kind of looking at them and saying, all right, well, can one of you separate? Can one of you show that you have that higher octane gear than everybody else here and be able to run through that top tier and show that you are head and shoulders above, a way like a Gen.G has, like T1 did on that hot streak, that type of thing. Haven't quite seen that separation in the LPL just yet. And I think maybe we're going to have to wait, unfortunately, until playoffs to really get those type of matchups where we can see that separation even amongst these top tier teams in the region.
And a quick note on the third fiddle of the LCK here, Hanwha Life in that 5 spot still. And listen, they're picking up 2-0s consistently against, Nongshim and KT, anyone not named Gen.G and T1. But even in those 2-0s, they still need to be cleaner. They need to be more dominant if you want to see a level that is going to compete with T1 and Gen.G.
It's almost unfair, but it's one of those ones where you go, you guys are seeing these games too, right? You're watching Gen.G and T1 and seeing that type of tier and what they are at and how they play. And then if you're gonna tell me that you are at that level, you're not at that level, bro. You got to get back to that level if you are Hanwha Life. When we're looking at it, I think you can identify, individually, someone like Zeus and his own individual performance and contribute, and how much of a share that he carries as the leader and big acquisition of this team. That's where I'm identifying a guy who needs to step up. And that's is the step up between being one of the top 3, top 5 teams in the world to being that top 2, top 1 team in the world.
And HLE got both T1 and Gen.G on the schedule this week. So we need at least one of those series wins for Hanwha so we can start taking them seriously again.
This is the big boy pants week, Hanwha Life. Make sure that you are prepared, hydrate, sleep, whatever it is, lock in for these games, because this is one of those ones where, again, our understanding, our picture, our expectations of the LCK could be flipped completely on their head if Hanwha Life is able to roar through this week. I am very invested in seeing this one in the top of the LCK.
Let's see the boys level up for some bangers over the week, no question. But that is it today for League Unlock. My name is Eric, here with Mark. As always, thank you guys for hanging out.